My grandmother always said to me, travel while you're young. And coming from a Chinese grandmother, let alone a Chinese Singaporean grandmother who grew up in the 1930s, to keep telling her grandchildren not to get a stable job, not to get this education level, not to settle down and get married and all that stuff. She just always said to us, travel while you're young.
Meet Michael Lim, writer, entrepreneur, and full-time traveler who left the corporate world behind to build a six-figure, one-person business. Instead of staying stuck in a job that didn't fulfill him, Michael took a leap. He quit, sold his business, and booked a one-way ticket. And now he helps others do the same and create freedom through online writing and their own business. Want to know how he did it? Michael shares his exact steps to going from zero to a thriving solo one-person business.
How did it feel to have this 9 to 5, to have to go there, to have a boss or whatever? And how does it feel now?
The worst day of my life, and I've written about this quite extensively, is when I got promoted to a director. I had worked for literally the better part of 6 to 12 months, busting my ass, doing overtime, taking on projects, collaborating with people I didn't necessarily want to collaborate with, all to get this title of being a director and a mild pay increase. So I busted my ass for the whole year. I finally got it in November. And I remember just sitting at the computer, looking at the congratulations email from my boss and just thinking, why have I sacrificed so much for this? This is utterly meaningless to me. And then I looked around at everyone else who is beyond a director, so maybe a senior director, executive directors, and even the CEO. And I said, do I want to spend the rest, like the next 5 to 10 years, climbing this slippery ladder to then take their role, but they're working every day, they have no control over their work, and they're building absolutely no leverage for themselves. They have no audience, there's no creativity in their job. All they do is take Zoom meetings all day, every day. So I thought to myself of where I am now and where my future would go if I projected it out 5 to 10 years. It's like nothing would change. I would just get the next title, just get the next raise, and there'd be no sense of satisfaction or meaning to it. So I realized there that I didn't want that. And in fact, 4 months later, I ended up quitting and then going and starting my first business. A second thing that happened is during that time, I worked for quite possibly the most incompetent person I've ever encountered in a workplace. And she made my life probably a living hell for the better part of 6 to 8 months. And I thought to myself, I was probably 25 or 26. I thought to myself, I will never let someone have that power over me. To have one person impact 40 to 50 hours of your week, as well as your mental health outside of work, and the feeling that I have towards work on a Sunday, and the feeling of being in work when I'm there on a Wednesday or Thursday and can't wait for the weekend. I said to myself, I will do everything in my power to never have someone be able to disrupt my sleep, to give me the Sunday scaries, to make me anxious at night, to make me angry during work. I would never give anyone that power to have over me ever again, to feel those emotions. So those two things happened in the same year, and that was the breaking point for me. I just feel like I will do everything in my power not to get back in that situation or have, a 9 to 5 job, which I'm not against, by the way, because if I ever had to go back to a 9 to 5 job, I think I'll just work for a creator, which would be pretty cool actually. Or a marketing firm that worked with creators. So anyway, bit of a digression, but those two things was the breaking point. It was like the glass shattering. It was taking the red pill in the Matrix. It was every sliding door moment of like, I'm never letting this ever happen to me again. And I'm never going to try and chase titles or a salary, which I then did later on when I sold my business. But, you got to learn these lessons the hard way, and sometimes multiple times.
And if you now wake up during your travels, how does it feel like in the morning?
I'll be honest here. Sometimes I wake up and it feels like I'm on drugs. Not that I've taken any, but I feel this intense feeling of like this high. I'm just high on life. I wake up with a lot of energy. I'm just excited for the day. All the coaching calls that I have, or the community calls I have, I'm excited to take. The stuff that I'm working on in terms of digital products and the writing that I get to do, it's an incredible feeling. I wake up with this sense of lightness. I just have, I feel unburdened, unshackled. Every word you can think of is just an intense level of freedom that I've never had before. And I could choose not to work today. I could choose to do a half day. I could go to the gym in the middle of the day. No one can tell me what to do. No one can control my time. It's a pretty awesome feeling. So that's the feeling I wake up with during the week. And then on the weekends, I try to take time away from work a little bit. I still work, but not as much. And even then, it's just a great feeling.
What was the situation back then?
Yeah, look, I'd love to say I had this grand vision and this grand plan that I executed flawlessly on. But at the time, I was working in the community and charity sector in Melbourne, in Australia. And I'd been working at this job for about 2 years before I started writing. And then I worked the job while I started building on Medium for another 3 years. So all up, I worked at this job for about 5 to 6 years while I was also writing on Medium at that time. So I've had a full-time job the entire time I've been writing up until recently. And then I decided to start my first one-person business after that job. And it was, look, very randomly. And again, you might think, how the hell did he make this jump into that space? Looking at procurement consultancy. So I laugh at it now, but it's a very boring topic. But if you want to build a road, rail, or hospital in Australia, and particularly in Melbourne, there's a whole bunch of government policies, essentially, that a construction or infrastructure company will need to abide by. And what I saw in the market, the gap that I saw was that construction companies are really good at building and constructing things, obviously. They're not so good at articulating themselves in a government grant or tender process. So I thought, okay, could I use my writing skills and my knowledge of government policy, because that's kind of what I studied at university, and apply it to this sector and bring it all together, bring like these unique skill sets with the foundation of writing into this service to solve a very painful problem for one particular customer. And I would do that for a variety of different construction and infrastructure companies. I was still writing on Medium at the time. I made a lot of mistakes business-wise, and made a lot of assumptions and got ghosted by clients and all this. That wasn't great for my bottom line and for my cash flow. So I ran into a lot of cash flow issues after about 12 months. I was also building a house at the same time, having these cash flow issues, and life just wasn't great. And I really thought that I had completely failed and that all this is just going to be for nothing. And in the entire time, I'd been documenting my experience and my journey on Medium. So, I had really prepared the headline that I've failed my first one-person business. Here's what I learned. Luckily, I never had to write that. But it got very close to failure. And one of the things that I started to do was actually find a community. So I'd been writing online alone for pretty much the entire time. So at that point, I'd been writing for at least 3.5 to 4 years. And so what I did was join an Australian-based creator community where I essentially learned the fundamentals of marketing, sales, what it means to put together an offer, how to drive traffic to it, how to convert, all that great stuff that I should have learned, but it didn't. And then I applied it with my writing, and I managed to recover the business back to like 20K per month, which was awesome. And then I ended up selling that business to a larger consultancy, which I then started working for about 10 months. So this brings us pretty much to the present day. I sold that business this time last year. Again, still writing on Medium the entire time. Has a bit of a side note, if I'm confusing people. Last year I had my biggest growth. So I went from 3,000 followers in probably August or March in last year, or maybe 6,000 last year and then I finished the year on 25,000, which was incredible in 2023. So 10 months later, after selling the one-person business, which brings us to July of this year, I really had an epiphany, a conversation with my grandmother, who I visited in Singapore in June. And I just realized that it's not the type of business or the type of lifestyle that I wanted to have. So yeah, I gave it all up. I walked away from a multi-six-figure income, a very fancy title at the time, and equity and dividends in a business that was doing very well in a very profitable niche. So in order to travel and sleep on my grandmother's couch in Singapore. So I really went from this, the top of the tree all the way to the bottom. And then I was, sleeping on a pull-out couch in my grandmother's living room and working from a local McDonald's for free Wi-Fi. So life has a way of humbling you very, very quickly.
What did your grandma say and what did you talk about so that you, change your whole life.
My grandmother always said to me, travel while you're young. And coming from a Chinese grandmother, let alone a Chinese Singaporean grandmother who grew up in the 1930s, to keep telling her grandchildren not to get a stable job, not to get this education level, not to settle down and get married and all that stuff. She just always said to us, travel while you're young. And that just stuck with me. And at the time, I didn't fully appreciate it, nor did I really understand what she was saying to me. And this is when I was a child. But every single time I saw her, because I'd see her every couple of years, me living in Melbourne, her living in Singapore, she would say the same thing: just travel while you're young, travel while you're young, travel while you're young. And this year she's 90, so I try to visit Singapore more often. So I went in June of this year, and she just asked me, "Are you happy with what you're doing?" Because I told her this is what I'm doing with my job. Good money. I've got a house now. I've got all these trappings, all these things that society tells you should get in order to be happy. And I got all those things. And quite honestly, while it looked great on paper, I was kind of miserable inside. I just didn't care about any of it. And I just was not fulfilled in any meaningful way. And I know that might sound ungrateful, but that's just what it was like. That was my experience. And I told her that I had work, I've got these responsibilities, I got this job. And she just said, effectively, like, that is all rubbish. These are just all excuses. You can get that money back. You can get these titles. You can get all these things. But what you'll never get back is the ability to be 29, free, and be able to travel. She didn't physically smack me in the face, but it was more like a metaphorical smack in the face of like, yeah, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I could take what I'd built on Medium, and at that point in June, I think I had about 70,000 followers. I already had ghostwriting clients. I was selling digital products at the same time. So I was bringing in anywhere from 8,000 to 9,000 Australian dollars per month. So, that's the medium income in Australia. So I could have just gone into this anyway. And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I not doing that? So I got back to Australia in early June. And 3 days later, I told my CEO at the time and business partner that I want to quit and I want to exit the business. And I said, I just want to go travel. And then 30 days later, served out my notice, bought a one-way ticket to Singapore, said, I'm not going to come back till May next year. I've got a friend's wedding in May next year. So I said, look, I've just got the next 10, 11 months to just see where this goes, jump off this cliff, try to build this business while I'm doing it, travel. Things might go wrong. Things have gone wrong every moment, even in the bad times, even when I was in bed with food poisoning, even when things got stressful with work and things didn't go right. There's better feeling of satisfaction of like, at least I've tried, or at least I'm trying. I'm in the arena. I've got blood on my face. I'm dusty. I'm trying. It's been almost 100 days since I've left. It's honestly the most fulfilling and most excited I've ever been in my life. Like, every day just feels like, wow, I've got this opportunity to travel. I'm in Vietnam at the moment. I've met some cool people, and I get to write words on the internet, impact people's lives, help them start their own business or scale their existing business. And it's just cool. I mean, you would feel, the same feeling, helping people start their business, grow it, monetize it, seeing them grow, seeing them hit this number that they've always wanted to hit, or publish and put their thoughts out there. It's an incredible feeling. Like strangers you've met on the internet, effectively, and you've positively impacted their lives either through your YouTube videos or your words. And it's like, this is awesome.
Hi, it's Christina. Are you a solo looking for a community to join? Then the Online Writing Club is for you. We are more than 11,000 people right now, and I'd love to welcome you.
What are you telling, Michael, someone who's like meeting you now and saying, why are you doing all this? How are you like explaining your situation to others?
Well, thankfully, like it's this is going to sound really stupid, but in some ways, I've still got the cover of being in my 20s to be able to say, well, I'm still in my 20s. I'm still figuring this out. So I've still got that cover for at least another 10 months. I turn 30 in May next year. So in some ways, I've still got that social acceptance that, oh, he's just in his 20s. He's just going to go traveling. He's just going to figure this out. So I've been able to exploit that quite well. But I've also been saying that while I'm traveling, I'm not just, seeing a whole bunch of temples, sitting on a beach, sipping coconuts. I am actually working and building a business while I do this. And I'm trying to document it as much of it as possible in public as I go. But it is tricky because there is pressures of people projecting somewhat their dreams and aspiration and also their insecurities on you, saying, why are you doing this? I interpret it as, why haven't I done this? And they're kind of pushing that onto you, hoping that you'll give them an answer that you're more unique than they are, so that they've got an excuse for why they haven't done something. But when you tell them that you started off as this pathetic medium writer, aka me, and I just got better over time, it's harder for them to accept because you're so familiar, because you started off as someone like them as well. So it is hard when you step outside of the traditional route and the traditional path, that you will encounter people's insecurities and also their projections onto you. And that's okay. Like I'm comfortable with people hating on the message that I'm sending or the lifestyle choices that I've made, because I'd ruthlessly much rather disappoint everyone else around me than disappoint myself and my grandmother.
When you talk with your grandma, I could imagine that she said something like, I regret not doing what you can do now, because now I'm 90 years old. I can't travel the world anymore. Is this something that she shared in your conversation?
It's a good question. I don't think she's ever said that to me explicitly, but she can't walk well. She's got numerous health conditions, and she's at a point where she needs full-time care. It's tough because I think she knows that she's coming towards the end of her life, and things that she has always wanted to do, she now really can't do anymore. But to say that, she traveled herself at a time when it wasn't very popular or very cheap or very safe to travel. Like, she showed me pictures when she went to Europe, when she went to Turkey back in the day. These are countries back in the day weren't that safe for her to travel to, and she went. I'm like, damn, she's a badass. Like, that's crazy. No internet as well. She just went. So she inspired me in many ways to be like, well, if she could do this in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, still no internet, no mobile phones, then what excuse do I have? And at the same time, my worst situation out of this is, just say my business implodes, I lose all my money. My worst situation is I take one direct flight back to Melbourne and I'm in exactly the same life that I left. Nothing has changed. Like, I think people think I'm this risk-taking cowboy. I'm not at all. Because the worst situation is I just go back to the life I had anyway, because it's always there for me. I still have a house. My mum is living in it at the moment. Bless her soul for looking after it while I'm gone. I can just go back to that, get a 9-to-5 job, and I'm literally back in the same spot where I started. I won't go homeless. I'm not going to be begging on the streets. I'm not going to go hungry. I'm just going to be not traveling anymore. If that's the worst case scenario, and that's a pretty good worst case scenario in my opinion.
How important are hard times and all these trials and errors in your life to really succeed in your solo business, in your one-person business?
The greatest period of growth that I had is when I looked at my bank account, my business bank account, and I realized I was in a terrible cash flow position. And I thought I might have to actually shut up shop, and this is it. Like, this is done, and I have to go find another 9-to-5 job. And it's only when I hit that rock bottom and that painful sinking feeling of I'm fucked if I don't do anything, and I have to act and I have to learn, that is when I had the greatest amount of growth personally, as my character development, but also in terms of the skill sets that I learned. I just got over the fact that I have to sell. I just got over the fact that I have to market myself. I got over the fact that I'm going to have to sell via sales call. And I just started doing it because the alternative was that it would have been failure and potentially be in debt. And if that was my alternative, I'm like, well, I will do everything in my power to avoid that situation and to avoid that pain, and move towards just trying to work out how I need to learn these skills to turn my business around. And I did do that. And it took 3 to 6 months. It was the hardest 3 to 6 months of my life. But all the fundamental skills that I learned, that I now use in my business, and all the mistakes that I made that led to that situation, I now make sure that I don't do that in my new business, or what I'm doing now. And I put safeguards, systems, processes around all those things to make sure that I never ever have to get back into that situation. So for anyone who's in that situation right now, where they're at the bottom, they feel lonely, they feel like their back is against the wall, they've tried everything and it's still not working, what I'll say to you is that this is the moment of growth. This is that decisive moment, that story you will tell, the book you will write about, that chapter in the book you write about, of this is the moment where it defined you and also your business for how you got out of it, but also turned it around. But I'm so grateful that I went through it. And I think anyone who's doing, traditional entrepreneurship through a startup or going solo, you're going to inevitably come to those times, and they're going to be the most testing times of your life, but also the time of your life, I think, when you grow the most.
I'm giving, I'm having the feeling I'm stuck. How can I figure out if the strategy I'm having right now is working or not? If I have to quit,
there are the physical limits of, it just becomes a mathematical equation. I have X amount of money in the bank account, my bills are Y. If I don't meet X, then and Y exceeds X, well, then I'm in trouble. So there is that financial hard limit of, okay, this is my runway. So I would get, number one, really clear on the runway that you have to be able to sustain yourself and how long you can go for. That was something that really helped me. Practically speaking, it's just a mathematical number that you've got to work out for yourself. If I'm talking to someone at 6 months, I wrote for like 3 years without really making any money. I would tell this person and I'd advise them, if they're at the point of either quitting their job or wanting to do this full-time, I'll say, don't do this part-time, work your full-time job and slowly build up while you have that job, and also building it on the side, because that gives you the time to create and that necessary financial base and security, like you mentioned, to be creative. And yes, you might have to wake up early to create more. Yes, you might go to bed later to work more. That's just the compromises you're going to have to make. 6 months, really, to me, when you tell me I've been trying for 6 months, that's like a toddler saying to me, I've been trying this thing at life and it's only been around for 3 years, right? It's like this. It kind of sounds ridiculous to me. You just have to extend your time horizon. And in terms of understanding if strategies and tactics work, this is where you have to think like a scientist. You have to conduct a whole lot of experiments and pivots, collect the data of whether they are actually working, and then make changes based on that data. I didn't arrive where I am with one grand design. I developed more of an archaeologist mindset rather than architect mindset. So as an archaeologist, you dig a little bit, you uncover a bone, you dig around it, you keep digging, you pivot, you go different directions. You change your strategy based on what you find. You might find that, for instance, I never talk about relationships in my articles or in my writing, because I'm a single guy who hasn't really had a successful relationship. I feel really disingenuous about talking about that. But I talk a lot about one-person business and entrepreneurship because it comes very naturally to me. So this was data that I had to go and uncover and create for myself. I also wrote viral articles about self-improvement, but I realized, like after a while, it just becomes a bit of mental masturbation. I'm just giving people this hits of motivation and inspiration, but how much change are they actually having? It's like I can't even track if they're changing at all, or if people just reading this for pleasure or for a bit of a dopamine hit. So you'll start to uncover, yes, you can write about these topics and they get you the clicks and the vanity, and that's great. But then you really start to uncover, this is the thing that lights you on fire: marketing, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, online writing, all that stuff. So 6 months, I would say, is look to extend your time horizon. And if you can't sustain yourself financially, which is the hard limit, you need to eat, you need to have housing while you write and while you create, is work a 9-to-5 job. There's nothing wrong with working a 9-to-5 job while you do it. I pretty much did that for most of my writing career up until like just a few months ago. And yes, I had my own business, but that was essentially providing the income in a very boring but very profitable niche to be able to write on the side. And now I've pivoted fully into this. If you're looking at yourself in 6 months, think to your 80 or 90-year-old self and ask yourself, would they be happy if you quit after 6 months? How long do you think they would have tried, knowing how important this goal was to their overall life? Probably years, maybe even decades to try. But they don't have decades anymore. They don't even have years anymore. So extend your time horizon and also think of your future self and what you're going to regret more.
What would be like the steps based also on your trials and errors and data points and so on? What would be like the steps to go from like 0 to hero within 6 months? Can I go from 0 to hero in 6 months? What are your tips for us to go from like nothing to something?
I'm going to assume this person, metaphorical person we're speaking to, has had a traditional 9 to 5 career and is probably in their late 20s, early 30s. So what I would do very specifically is understand what type of person I want to hang around with all day. So when I was serving construction and infrastructure companies and people who work there, no disrespect to them, but I didn't really care about their problems. And I also didn't really like hanging around them all the time. Construction and engineering people, we speak different languages. They're very different ways of working, very different ways of looking at the world. So I would say, what is the type of person, who are the type of people you love just speaking to and hanging around with all day? So for me, that's people like you, creator, solopreneur, online writer. We could talk about marketing all day. We could talk about writing all day. I get energy from conversations like this. So start with the person that you want to serve and then marry them. And then once you've married them, you also start to solve some of their problems. So look at, if I want to hang around solopreneurs, online writers every day, generally the biggest problem they have is either monetization or scaling their monthly income. That's always going to be a problem for them. So I will think about, okay, who do I love serving? Do I want to marry them? It's generally a yes. And what problems can I solve for them? And then lastly, it's like, okay, how can I embed my personality, my beliefs, my philosophy, my experiences, and my expertise from everything I've done in my previous life in my 9 to 5 job into what I'm doing now? So how can I take, what I did in procurement? How can I take everything I did in government policy? How can I take all the public speaking and all the facilitation work that I did in my 9 to 5 life and reapply it to a different domain to solve this customer's problem in a really unique way? And I think if you can get really clear on those three things. So for me, I love speaking to solopreneurs who also love traveling, who also love marketing, who also love writing. I want to help them scale their income so that they can, help others do what they do best, right? And the way I want to do it is through my limitless writing system. So this is where you can think about what you've done in the past, the people you want to serve, and the problems you love solving for them. And if you can get really clear on that, that sets the foundations for how your content should sound like, but also how your writing should sound like. And it's pretty easy to monetize after that. In my experience working with over 10 solopreneurs over the last couple of months, it's very easy once you're very clear on those things. You talk about the how becomes a lot easier.
And would you say that it's possible within 6 months to go from like 0, rock bottom, to a 6-figure business? Is something like this like doable?
It really depends what niche you're in. So let's just say you're a former investment banker who brought startups to IPO. So if that's your background, and then you started doing that as a one-person business, so you help startups go into IPO, so initial public offering, so going public, then yes, you could, right? You could get 6 figures in one hit. If you're opening up a gym, for instance, going from 0 to 6 figures, really tricky, because there's literally a physical limit to how many people you could have in the gym. There's upfront capital costs that will take away from your profit margin, and also rent. So the answer to that question, unfortunately, is it depends on the niche and service you're offering. But I would say 90 to 95% of the time, I would say that's tricky. But you can definitely make anywhere from 1 to 5K per month.
Hi, it's Christina. Do you want to meet Michael? Then today is your lucky day. You can meet Michael inside the Online Writing Club for a special workshop. So join us today and 11,000 other like-minded creators and writers.
So if I'd say I'd start like a digital online business, an online writing business, how long would you say can it take, like best case and worst case, to go really from 0 to a 6-figure?
Look, you could definitely do it in 6 months. It's how hard are you willing to go? This question is kind of like, how long is a piece of string? Because some people are willing to sacrifice absolutely everything until they get 6 figures. In your example that you're giving me, is if I can assume this person has maybe 1,000 Medium followers, publishing regularly and also posting on LinkedIn. So they've got this established writing skill enough to build a following. And what they're able to do is repurpose that writing to help get leads for a founder or a startup or a business to attract more customers? Well, in that case, in that very specific example, you can charge anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per month for ghostwriting. So to go from 0 to six figures, you'll do it in slightly over 6 months if you're making anywhere from that five. If you get 2 to 3 clients, you'd be making anywhere from 12 to 15K a month.
How important is like this environment model when it comes to picking your platform on the internet when you want to get started?
What problem can you solve, and for which people is that problem the most painful? So, as an example, a water bottle at a supermarket worth 80 cents because there's water everywhere. A water bottle at a gas station, $2. A water bottle at a concert is like $8. So there is the same product solving the same problem, but placed in a different environment is worth either 40 cents or $8. And people will pay because the environment and the problem you're solving is so painful in one environment that they would pay $8 for it. Which is, if you're dying of thirst at a sweaty concert, you're going to pay $8 for a bottle of water. So this is where you could apply your writing to freelancing on Fiverr and maybe get paid 50 cents to $1 per word if you're lucky. You could then apply it to writing on Medium, getting royalties, which has been slashed for many, many people. Or you can directly apply your writing into helping a established business or a startup or a founder either build their personal brand or get clients. And for, let's just say it's a business to business SaaS marketing platform, let's just as an example, one customer is worth to them over a lifetime, over 12 months, $50,000. So how much would they pay someone to help them get a customer? Probably in the 1 to 5K mark, because they know that in the back end, they're going to get 10x return from every successful lead. You need to audit your skills and think about creatively, which group of people does my skill set solve, which is very painful for them.
And would you recommend someone who would want to start writing, still going on Medium and building a portfolio? Or what are the platforms you would recommend right now to be seen, be read? And how important do you think are followers? Of course, you have now this big amount of followers on YouTube, on Medium, but how valuable are these followers, and how would you compare this to a model such as Substack, which is also offering like having a blog and having a newsletter?
If you want to write but not make money from it, and you just want your words to be out there, which is a fine goal to have, right? Technically any platform can help you achieve that. So I would really get clear on what is your goal that you want to have. And if it's just to write or if it's to make money, well, then the platform you choose and your approach to it is very, very different. That leads on to the next question of, if you wanted to then build a business out of it, which platform should you use despite having, something like 82,000 followers on Medium? If I were to start again, I would just go straight to Substack. The reason being is that Substack in and of itself as a platform is a complete funnel. You've got the top of funnel with notes, you've got the middle of funnel with the newsletters, and you've got the bottom of funnel with the monetization. And you can also put social proof on there. People can recommend you, all that stuff. So if I was a new creator, a new writer who wanted to start to monetize my words and build an audience, I would go directly onto Substack, which is why I've also joined the platform or restarted on the platform in July, because I just saw the potential there. Well, if you want to then sell to B2B SaaS companies or B2B marketing platform companies, whatever it is, you got to go where they are. So if you want to make money that way through your writing, you got to find your audience and where they already go every day. Where do they hang out? And that's probably going to be LinkedIn. So then you want to start writing on LinkedIn as well. So you can use LinkedIn and Substack. LinkedIn is really as your top of funnel because you don't own the audience there, but your paying customers are on that. Then you can funnel them into your Substack newsletter. And then the last part is obviously the trust, which I would still use ConvertKit for. Reason why is because ConvertKit has just got more powerful automations and sequences you can use to nurture and indoctrinate your audience into your universe. Like I run my free 5-day email course on there. It's had over 1,000 people go through it. I don't have that functionality on Substack yet. That could change, but I would still use Substack, ConvertKit, and probably LinkedIn. That's the platforms that I would be on.
And medium? No medium in this funnel?
If I was starting in 2025, no, I wouldn't focus on medium. Me is different because I already have 80,000 people on there. So I can publish something and it will get traction just because of how many followers I've got. It's a different context for me. If you've already got an audience in Medium, keep going. But if you don't have any audience in any platform, I would say start on Substack.
How important is, in the strategy you shared, how important is joining a community, paying a coach, having a coach, and so on?
I think online courses that don't have an attached community are a bit overplayed now. I think a lot of people now with AI and just information being out there and YouTube, information is out there. So people aren't struggling with information, which is what you get from an online course. But where people go wrong is accountability and implementation for their context. And what I've seen done really powerfully nowadays is people will create a self-paced course, but then attach it to a community and ongoing calls, maybe once a month, where people can bring in what they've done and be able to get some advice on where they might have gone wrong. Every dollar that I've invested in a paid community and every dollar that I've invested in a coach has been a 10x return. Like by far the best thing I've ever bought in my life. The coach that I have now has helped me progress my business in 3 months, essentially doubling my business revenue in 3 months since we started working together. Actually, it's been about 4 months. So we started working together at the start of June. So it's coming up with 5 months. And I've been able to go from strength to strength with my own business. And also just the community that is also attached to that high ticket coaching has been phenomenal just for getting the support that I need. So I'm not even trying to hock off my own coaching and my own community. It's if you find someone, whether it's Christina, whether it's Derek, whoever you feel like you can join their community and get a lot of value out of, and you already enjoy their free content, and you know that you could go faster if you got more access to them, go with them. We learn as humans through community and through mentorship. I recently became an uncle last year, and everything that my niece and nephew does is through mimicry. They just copy everything you do. While we do less of that as we grow older, that's how we just learn as humans. You see another human doing it, you try it for yourself, you get feedback, and you just copy what works and see what happens to you. So getting access to a community of people who are all trying to do the same thing means you get access to 6 other people's failures. So you get to learn what not to do very, very quickly because you're all trying different experiments and then you all share what works. So you're getting 6 times the efforts for just joining a community. Just say it is 6 people. That's the one I joined. And with a coach very specifically, what they are giving you is not information. They're not giving you more information. They're giving you the context to be able to execute. They are able to give you very specific unlocks for the context that you're in, the business that you have, and the model that you have to be able to go further, faster. You know, the saying that I always like to say is if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's through a community and through a coach.
Is it like this high ticket offer, or is it like something that is below $100? What would you recommend on how to pick like the right coach for you?
You know, any good coach and any good content creator will have free content out there that you can binge, whether it's the YouTube videos, Medium articles, Substack, whatever it is, Twitter. So what you want to be doing at the start, if you are prospecting for a coach, is buy the coach, not just the coaching. So there are some people you just vibe with their energy and you vibe with who they are as a person and you align with them values wise, or they speak in a way that just resonates or cuts deep with you. Go with that person, whoever that person may be. In terms of how much should you invest is the question you're asking. For me, this is my personality. If I don't invest a sum that makes me uncomfortable, I don't have enough skin in the game to make changes. That's just my personality, because my effort, my willingness to take action and overcome procrastination is made greater when there's more at stake. If I know I'm paying someone 600 USD a week, I'm going to prepare for those one-on-one calls we have. I'm going to do all the homework they tell me to do. I'm going to action every single thing and then report back on what I've done. So it's different for everyone in different contexts. I also don't have any dependents. I literally just have to take care of myself, and I don't really do a good job of that anyway. So it's really how much can you afford to invest? But then I always think about how much can you afford not to invest? What's the cost of staying the same? What's the cost of working a job you hate for another year because you've not made any changes? What's the cost of not writing that book and then 20 years later you regret that? What's the cost of not starting that side business that ultimately gives you a life raft away from your 9 to 5 job? There's a cost of investing in yourself and there's a cost of inaction. And I much rather pay the cost and risk the possibility of getting ripped off, which has almost never happened to me because there's such thing as refunds and canceling your membership. I'd rather risk that happening than the cost of staying the same.
Of course, there's this rise of communities. However, of course, many people will feel this fatigue soon. And then they will say, hey, I will only go with Michael's and Christina's community and not the others. And that's so my question is, what do you think makes you stay? And also, how do you make your members, because you also have a membership, am I right, or a community? What do you do to make your members stay?
Well, I mean, for me, at a very practical, pragmatic sense, what would get me to stay is how long can this community continue to solve the problems that I have? So, similar to going to a restaurant, I want to be able to offer my community a buffet. So, if there's some people who want to eat seafood or who are vegetarians, I have that option for them to eat that and they can continue eating that forever as they're part of my community. And then if they want to go from being a vegetarian to being a meat eater to then eating dessert, I have that offer available within the community and how I've structured it to be able to deliver that for them at a way that is not has time, burden for me, but also solves their problem in a way that's really effective. So this is where I think having a clear journey that your community is going to go through, or your community members are going to go through with you, from going from point A to point B to point C, what is that offer buffet that I'm going to get along the way? So how can I offer them an entree, an appetizer, several main meals, and then some dessert? Ultimately, at some point, they are going to leave you, and that's okay. But how can you get them to stay for 1, 2, maybe 3 years, or in fact, maybe stay forever in some cases? In that way, it's really thinking through what is your community set out to do and what are the problems they have all the way from the life cycle of starting all the way to being mature.
What's on your bucket list? So where do you want to travel, for instance, in 2025? Do you still see yourself traveling?
Yeah, I see myself actually basing myself out of Asia for the next 2 to 3, 4 years, maybe. I will be going back to Vietnam to meet some friends in January. I'll spend Chinese New Year at the end of January in Singapore. I'll spend a month in the Philippines in February. I'll spend a month in either Japan or Korea, haven't decided yet, in March. Head back to Melbourne and then go to Europe.
And Michael, for everyone who's now in love with you and your writing and everything you shared, how can we connect with you?
I think I'm very active on Substack. So head over to Substack. We can put in the link somewhere. That's probably where I'm most active. I'm posting every day on notes. I respond to DMs, good ones. Don't just say, "Can we recommend each other?" I mean, you've never seen you on my on my newsletter. I've never heard from you. You've never interacted, and you just want to. Anyway, that's another story. But Substack is the place to be. That's where I'm probably the most active and spending a lot of time. LinkedIn is also a place where I'm posting quite frequently. But if you want the raw thoughts on the top of my head that I just think about while either walking or on the toilet, those are my notes. So you can get them there.
Love this interview? Then make sure to subscribe to never miss one of our episodes.